This interview is brought to you by Fortinet Federal. How can your agency improve network visibility, control, and cyber defense? With advanced technology and expert support from Fortinet Federal. Advance your mission with modern, trusted networks that connect data centers, clouds, and remote users. For more, see FortinetFederal.com.
Hi, everyone. I'm Roshan Fortune. I'm the managing editor at AFCEA Media and Research here in beautiful Baltimore at AFCEA TechNet Cyber. Joining me today, General Timothy Haugh, the director of the National Security Agency and the commander of U.S. Cyber Command. Thank you so much for joining me here.
It's an honor to be here, Ross.
So I want to talk about the great power competition and how cybersecurity factors into that. I know it's something that is at the top of pretty much everyone in the national security world's mind. How are you seeing it as it changes over the years?
So first, I think the way that I look at it is through the missions of our two organizations. So when I think about great power competition, it starts with what we've been asked to do at U.S. Cyber Command by the President in our Unified Command Plan. We defend the Department of Defense Information Network. We defend the nation in cyberspace. Really, that means to counter adversary hacking activity. And then we develop cyber options for the other combatant commanders to integrate both offense and defense into their activities and their planning. So that's really from a cyber command perspective. From a NSA standpoint, we have two major missions. One is foreign intelligence, signals intelligence, the lead for the nation in conducting signals intelligence, and then cybersecurity for national security systems. So when we think about that, then through those missions, through the lens of great power competition, it's really about how China is both targeting our critical infrastructure and also targeting the intellectual property of our industry.
You set me up perfectly because in your keynote, you were talking about the pacing threat that China holds to the defense industrial base. How does that work with NSA, with U.S. Cyber Command, and generally with government cooperating with the defense industrial base?
Well, when we look at the 16 sectors of critical infrastructure that have been identified by the president, the Department of Defense is responsible for one of those, and that's the defense industrial base. And so when we look at the defense industrial base in the national defense strategy, it's identified as an enduring advantage for our nation and for the Department of Defense. So when we think about, from a cyber perspective, the critical role that gets played to be able to ensure that they can operate without being targeted by adversary cyber capability, to ensure that their intellectual property that we rely upon is protected, and also that they are the sustainment arm of the Department of Defense. They're critical extension of the department in everything that we do. So from our standpoint, one of the critical roles that we play in partnership with the DoD-CIO is the defense of the defense industrial base.
To that end, you talked again during the keynote about resiliency and the ability to adapt. What does that look like in those kind of partnerships?
Well, when I think about resiliency, what we are really thinking our way through, as the department has said, our objective is to get to a zero trust network. That really will change many of our dynamics and how we think about cybersecurity and cyber defense. But while we're in that build out, we also have to recognize that networks are going to be vulnerable to things like 0 days. How do we ensure that we rapidly identify, whether that's through industry partnerships, whether it's a part of how we censor and monitor, or it's how we leverage the intelligence community to identify a threat, rapidly work to remediate that threat, but ensure that regardless of what an adversary throws at us, that we can operate through that and ensure that we've got secure, resilient communications for all of our commanders around the globe.
You also touched upon the sort of pace of technology, the interconnectedness. What is the kind of cost benefit of that? Obviously, we have this convenience and everything, but the threats, they're definitely up there.
They definitely are. And that's where I think the criticality of what the National Security Agency has done to really take a much more public face in how we communicate cyber threats to a broader audience. How do we do public disclosures of these activities? It's not really intended to name and shame. What it's intended to do is really to get collective defense from industry, from our partners, both our foreign allies and our interagency, so that we can all act against those threats simultaneously, making it much more difficult for a cyber actor to take advantage of that threat.
Well, to that end, can you sort of expound upon the partnership aspect of that, both in industry and with global partners?
So I think if you go to NSA.gov website, and you'll see a series of cybersecurity advisories. And just by looking at who signed and participated in building those advisories, you'll see many elements of the interagency. You'll see DHS, you'll see FBI, you'll see other elements that are inside the U.S. government. You'll also see collaboration between NSA and Cybercommand. And then finally, you'll see industry represented in those cybersecurity advisors as a contributor, as well as foreign governments that are contributing so that we can collectively work together to be able to identify these threats and rapidly create knowledge that people can leverage for their own defense.
I know I've talked with some former CISA people about the idea that transparency is really helpful there. Obviously, it's a balance, but when a threat comes, how do you communicate to everybody to be aware for it?
So I think one of the things that we have learned, and the previous cybersecurity director of NSA, Rob Joyce, would talk about very often, is what we know isn't as sensitive as how we know it. So I think we've really balanced our tradecraft that we can gain sensitive understanding of what our adversaries are doing, but we have so many different ways that we could know that. It's allowed us to expose that information at an unclassified level so that we can contribute and then partner with many other elements and do that in a very public way.
I can't let you go here without asking. It's been a few months. You're coming up on 6 months. How has this dual hat role treated you so far?
It's an honor of a lifetime. We have two incredible workforces. The missions of both the National Security Agency and the U.S. Cyber Command are absolutely critical to the defense of our nation. I get to work every day with incredibly talented people that are committed to the defense of our nation, and also work with a series of interagency partners, commercial partners, and foreign partners that all are trying to do the best thing they can for the national security of their nations. It's an honor of a lifetime.
That's great to hear, and that's very cool. General Haugh, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Ross.
This interview is also brought to you by Comcast Government Services. Find out how Comcast Government Services is providing solutions to the federal government that enable mission-critical network transformation designed to scale with evolving needs. Visit comcastbusiness.com/FedGov to learn more.